just to get right to the bottom line, this program was completely game changing and changed my entire life.
I'm interviewing Brenda today, and I want you guys to meet Brenda and really listen to her journey, because her health journey to even get here and her way out of that hellhole is what we're going to be talking about today. It's going to resonate with a lot of you. So without further ado, Brenda, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our audience.
Well, thank you for inviting me. My name is Brenda. I've been dealing with autoimmune issues for over 30 years, and I've worked in healthcare for almost as long. I've worked with physicians, surgeons, nurse practitioners in ambulatory clinics and in inpatient units. I've worked with a lot of different healthcare providers, years of rheumatologists and other specialists. And just to get right to the bottom line, this program was completely game changing and changed my entire life.
I love the perspective of interviewing someone who's worked in healthcare, because we actually know behind the scenes what the real deal is happening in healthcare, conventional healthcare that we deliver, that we think is the standard and best care we offer people with autoimmune disease. So I love the perspective that you've worked in healthcare and you've also studied a lot of integrative medicine and functional nutrition yourself.
I have.
So let's talk about this journey. What struggles, health struggles have you been struggling with, and first of all, how long have you been struggling with autoimmune issues now that you can look back?
Sure.
Recognize it.
So definitely since the 90s. So that's over 30 years, which is a little bit shocking to me. And on further reflection, it's really back since high school.
Okay.
I was starting to deal with autoimmune issues in the late 70s and early 80s, just to date myself.
I'm the same, Brenda. You and I are very same age. So you and I speak in the same language. Okay.
Yes.
We look good.
Yes, we do.
So 30 years. And I'm curious, in our audience that are watching right now, how many of them can actually, now that you understand how much is actually autoimmune, how many of these mystery symptoms all over your body you have, and you look back, you're like, dang, that was autoimmune from my teenage years or even younger.
Exactly. So I started off with terrible acne as a teenager, with GI issues. In my 20s, just fatigue, acne, and then started having these really weird symptoms I couldn't figure out. Turns out it was autoimmune and probably lupus. So I was diagnosed with lupus in my mid to late 20s.
First diagnosis.
Yes.
Yes. Didn't
And
explain everything.
Raynaud syndrome.
Didn't explain everything either. Like, what does lupus have to do with Raynaud? It's like, just because you got the diagnosis of lupus doesn't mean that explained everything.
Correct.
Wait, there's more. Keep going.
Yes. So the Raynaud syndrome with my fingers and my toes around the same time. Oh my goodness. I was put on so many medications. I was on prednisone back then, reacted terribly to it, did not help me. That's when I started studying nutritional and integrative medicine. Since prednisone I didn't react well to, there was nothing else Western medicine wise that could help.
Yeah.
I realized I was going to have to do something with my diet and with my lifestyle.
Yeah. And I mean, you had also mentioned in your 20s, you had migraines.
I did. I had debilitating migraines, I had terrible chest pain. I had all these weird skin rashes. Moving forward, as we moved along in the journey, I developed what's called chilblain lupus, which is a lovely condition with your toes and feet that's absolutely excruciatingly painful.
Yeah.
Diabetes too. I was diagnosed as diabetic in the mid-2000s. That was not fun. Started developing some lung issues with asthma and COPD. I'm probably missing things, but moving further ahead, around 2016, I became the sickest I've ever been in my life. I literally thought I was going to die. I was in the ER several times. We couldn't figure out what was happening with exhaustion, fatigue. I had to take a nap, 15 to 20 minute nap every hour.
Per hour, not per day, per hour.
Per hour.
Yeah.
I'd heard about people suffering like this, but then it happened with me. Excruciating pain that had me up all night crying at the edge of my bed because my hands hurt so bad.
Yeah.
The only relief was to hang them down between my legs on the edge of my bed. Couldn't sleep.
Is that when you were diagnosed?
Get out of a chair.
What is that when you were actually then diagnosed with the Raynaud's or the peripheral neuropathy or the scleroderma? Did that
No, and
help with
all
the
of that was
diagnosis?
beforehand. This
Okay.
ultimately out of that illness came a diagnosis of scleroderma,
Okay.
which was pretty terrifying because I know that that's not good.
So
Scleroderma was not good.
literally shit ton of diagnoses and symptoms from teens.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when you first, I mean, you joined our program 2 months ago.
Mhm.
So at the time you joined our program 2 months ago, working in healthcare, being educated in a lot of this yourself, multiple diagnosis, what do you think was the biggest problems that you needed to solve?
Oh, relief from pain.
Pain, number one, because you had the
Pain that had
Charcot's foot.
ruled my life.
You had Charcot's foot. It's not just your hands.
Yes.
Mhm.
So I have a permanently deformed, damaged foot due to diabetes.
Mhm.
The pain for that is just unbelievable.
Do you know a
I
lot
had
of
been
people don't?
diagnosed with celiac just before I joined too.
Another one. And so my thing is that, do you know how many people out there, how many doctors out there don't even know diabetes is autoimmune?
Right,
And
right.
then celiac to boot on top of this. I'm one, and so suffice it to say, there were hundreds of targets of autoimmune attack all over your body. You were just sitting duck waiting for more and more diagnosis. Okay.
Yes.
So pain was a number one obstacle. What else? What are some of the biggest problems you needed to solve?
I wanted to live the life that I had been born to live, and I wasn't.
Quality
I
of life
firmly
sucked.
believe that we're all born for a purpose, and I didn't think my purpose was going to work, making it through the day, coming home, getting into bed.
That is correct. We're not living our purpose when we have zero quality of life.
Right.
So pain, quality of life. Is there
Yes.
any
And
other?
I
Mhm.
needed to not be ruled by my gut issues.
Ah, planning your life around bathrooms?
Yes. Just
Mm.
like the commercials say.
Except those are
It's
warning
pretty
for drugs
sad when you
usually.
realize you're the target audience for those commercials. But I
Mm.
mean, I couldn't go anywhere. I had to make sure my trips were short. I
Well,
stopped going out.
I mean, here's the thing. You got all these diagnoses, you had severe pain, really low quality of life, and you were ruled by bathrooms in your gut. And you work in healthcare and then as an extremely educated individual and knowledgeable about how to get healthcare. So what's the problem?
Western medicine does not get to the root cause of autoimmune.
Ding, 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 ding. And we
And
work in
that's what I
healthcare.
wanted.
We work in healthcare. You break your leg, go see Western medicine because you need a cast.
Right.
Right? I mean, but something chronic like celiac, diabetes, Charcot's foot, neuropathy, lupus, scleroderma, there are very few options and answers. So I do have a question. What kind of answers or help did you get going to see all these doctors that you've worked with?
Well, I may or may not have gotten a diagnosis.
Got a
And I had
diagnosis.
stopped being that interested in diagnoses a few years ago after hearing you on Facebook.
What did you hear that impacted you on that one?
A few years ago, that's how long I had been following you on Facebook.
Longtime stalker, first time enroller.
Yes. 2 years ago, it was around the time that my GI symptoms were probably starting.
Mhm.
And you said something about, in the main Transform group, you said something about diagnoses don't matter, the solution matters. And I thought, oh, I heard angels singing. It's like, I can give up the diagnoses. I don't care. I just want the solution.
In fact, I don't even care what your diagnosis is.
Yeah.
You could tell me you have CIDP 6.3.8. It doesn't change my approach to helping you find the root cause of this problem. I'm more interested in what's fueling this than your CIDP 6.3.8. Who cares? But yet
Yeah.
that's part of our autoimmune story, is that we get very tied to either finding a diagnosis or being attached or defined by our diagnosis. And then we think it's out of the box that we have all these other symptoms.
Yeah.
And it takes the focus off of, the focus should be, how are we going to end this?
Yes.
Not the name of this. Why do I care what the name of what you have is? I care how you're going to end this. Because again, you wanted to end your pain, you wanted to improve your quality of life, and you didn't want to be ruled by your gut anymore. None of those frustrations or problems was solved by getting the name of a diagnosis. So what were your offers when you did get a diagnosis from your Western medicine doctors?
What were my offers?
Yeah, what did they offer you? See, a lot of
Oh,
people
I
think,
see what you're saying.
I mean, I think a lot of people think going to a doctor, your regular rheumatologist or GI doctor, means that you're going to get all the tools and all the answers to treat your problem. So I want to go behind the scenes. You work in healthcare, you experience this healthcare, and you have like 10 shit ton of autoimmune diseases. So what was your experience going to all these doctors, some of which were your colleagues you worked with?
I occasionally had a really great doctor
Mhm.
who, and I've had many really great doctors, but a really great doctor who also wanted to work more closely with me to try to figure out what was happening. They
Mhm.
didn't know what was happening.
Mhm.
So what they really offered me was sometimes just sympathy, usually another prescription,
Mm.
always a bunch more labs, maybe some x-rays or other tests.
Mhm.
And then they may or may not have a helpful interpretation of those tests. But the
Now that you're learning.
interpretation was usually continue your medication or let's up your dose.
Or let's wait and watch until you're worse and then we'll do something else. I love the wait and watch response.
Yes.
But these are good doctors, good people, well-meaning
Yes.
people, but these are their only tools. People they think they're going to a store full of a buffet, and they're going literally to a store where there's like two choices. Do you want choice A and choice B? That's it. And if there's nothing else, there's nothing I can offer you, go take an antidepressant, or send you off to somebody else. But you
Yes.
really are, when you go into a conventional doctor, choice A or choice B? More lab testing, more medication, or do you want a surgery? That's really it. We'll throw some sympathy in with it if we're not judgmental. But even then, that is the best that we have to offer because of the way we train doctors. So question for you, before we go in further, where are you now? This is just 2 months later. Okay. So where are you now 2 months later? You just completed our 2-month online program. What has happened to some of these pain symptoms, GI symptoms, your quality of life? I'd love to hear where you are at.
My life is so much better. I feel like I'm starting to have a life.
About time, lady.
I went to something that I haven't gone to for several years this last weekend with a dear friend, which
Mm.
involved 2.5 hours of walking on concrete.
Woman.
And I paid for it a little bit,
Mhm.
but it was fun. And I didn't have to look for restrooms.
You don't have to be ruled by bathrooms.
Right.
Okay, so no longer ruled by bathrooms.
No longer ruled by bathrooms. When I do have an issue, I can immediately figure out, why did this
Cause.
happen?
The cause.
You gave me the tools and
Hell
you
yeah.
gave me the knowledge.
Would you
And
be able
then
to
I
walk
can figure out what to do.
cause, effect, and action?
Yes.
I love that. What about
Yes.
this walking 2.5 miles? Would you have been able to walk 2.5 miles even at all, or even close to that before?
I probably walked longer than that. It was 2.5 hours.
Wait, 2.5 hours?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Would you have been able to do that
No,
before?
no, absolutely not.
So
I
fatigue
couldn't
is better.
stand
Fatigue
15
is
minutes of
better.
standing.
Mobility is better. Pain's better. The ability to even
Yes.
just stand is a hell of a lot better.
Yes.
And then on top of that, you're not running to a bathroom.
And I have more energy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not ruled by fatigue.
Mm-hmm. Naps.
I used to even I'd go home, sit down, I'd fall asleep in my chair. I don't do that anymore.
Because you're living, lady.
My body is functioning. It's not just shutting down. I don't have the same level of constant joint pain. Even my Charcot Foot pain is calm me down a little bit.
Okay, so this is just 2 months in. I mean, this is literally, I tell people, the tip of the iceberg to what's going to happen over the course of this year. People think this is dramatic. And I'm like, guys, this is the first 10%. Okay. This is going to continue to get better and better. And that's hard for people to believe, because I'm going to ask you, 2 months ago, did you believe that it was possible to be where you're at right now?
I was extremely hopeful.
Hopeful.
But I didn't know going into the program, I really didn't know if this was going to work for me.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Why did you almost not join the program? Like, what were some of the things that went to your head? Because most people watching this are not in our programs, and they're watching you right now. And like, why should I join this program? What were your obstacles to preventing you from joining the program?
Sure. Well, one was whether, and I've heard this over and over again in the interviews too, is this a scam? I've worked in online marketing and e-commerce.
Yeah.
I know how all of the marketing works. I'm
Mhm.
thinking, is this marketing? Is this real? There's an awful lot of case study videos. Those are hard to fake. But is this really real? Is she real?
Is she real? Is this real?
Yes.
Okay, how did you answer that? How were you able to get satisfactory answer to that?
When I made the decision to go ahead and join,
Mhm.
which was after about 2 weeks of intensive watching every single video you've ever made, I
After
think,
2 years, you're more intensely watching
just
it now.
looking for a loophole.
Okay, where's the loophole? I'd love to know. What was the loophole?
Yeah.
Okay.
I basically had to make a decision just to trust it. And my
Mhm.
mantra for the first few weeks was trust the process, trust the process, trust the process. Stop
Well,
second guessing everything.
but here's the thing. This is so interesting. People talk about because it's on the internet or whatever, is this a scam? Okay, I'm going to ask you point blank. You've worked in healthcare for 30 years, so have I. And my question is, do you know any other program or doctor that has this much proof
No,
available for the public to watch?
absolutely not. This is not what Western medicine does.
Because people are like huddled in the corner, private. This is my little problem. And very few people are coming out on videos and sharing, I have this, this, and this, and this, and this is my journey and how it happened. Because I'll tell you right now, I know of no other physician, no other program that provides proof in the quantity and variety and quality that we do. Obviously, the number of testimonials, but then also you realize at a certain point you had to take a leap of faith.
Mhm. Yes.
What about the question, is she real? And is she for real? How is that
Yes.
answered? Yeah. Come at me, girl. Come at me. Come at me.
Yeah, so in the program, we interact with you quite a bit online. We see you quite a bit.
Yeah, more than you ever have. Think about the hours you've spent with me. Is more than all the hours you've ever combined with any of the physicians, all the physicians you've ever worked with.
Probably.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
during that time, I've watched you give people tough love.
Mm,
I've watched you be incredibly self-reflective and sharing your own story and your own journey.
yeah.
And probably the first time I watched you, frankly, honestly, become a little emotional about something that had happened in your life, I thought, okay, she's real. Because what she's doing right now isn't really something you can fake.
Mm,
And then seeing how you would become emotional over somebody's success, I thought, okay.
it's true. Thank you. Thank you. Mm,
And then getting to see a dog or a cat is just it's just icing on the cake
there's a dog right
for me.
I love that. Okay, so you had to overcome the hurdle of, is this program for real? And then, is she for real? And then you said, is it going to work for me? How are you going to answer that now? Is it going to work for me? Tell me your journey through that one.
Yeah, so probably 3 weeks into the program, I was still thinking, is this really going to work for me? Trust the process, trust the process.
Yeah,
But
and I
I
say that a lot.
also
Mhm.
had a lot to learn. 30
Yeah.
years of experience with autoimmune and 30 years of studying and reading about integrative medicine doesn't make me the expert in getting to the solution. And I knew that. And I also knew that given all of your experience, you were the expert in getting to the solution and you're following the right steps in the right order
Mhm.
and having to get over this constant learning curve
Yeah.
of, oh, so now I need to do this. Oh, I'm actually not eating the right way. Maybe I'm not drinking enough water. All of those things did actually start to come together. And I think it was about 3 weeks in, I started having some small wins, but I think about 3 weeks in, I got my first, oh my gosh, this is working for me. And I
And
think the biggest aha was walking across the street and realizing, I was walking across the street fast, no fear of falling, and I could actually feel my feet inside of my shoes, which I hadn't felt my feet in the skin against the socks. I hadn't had that sensation in years.
that's neuropathy, Brenda. And that level of neuropathy typically, and I tell people that all the time, nerves take about 8 to 12 months to heal minimum, right? But at the same time, this is within a couple of weeks, you are gaining feeling back in your feet again, which is phenomenal.
And I was walking fast. Now I can walk fast again. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. What do you think were the biggest ahas? Is there some sort of secret sauce that people don't know about up front? Like, what were your biggest ahas that really brought these outcomes just in the last 2 months? Like, what was, like, I always say that you see me in the training, I'm like, oh, your neuropathy's better. Tell me the why.
Yeah.
Because that's not some miracle only Brenda experiences. There's a lesson here for everyone else in the program to learn from, because your aha on the why is also their ahas if anybody in the program has neuropathy or any other
Yeah.
related symptom. So what do you think was the why to why some of these symptoms really responded so quickly?
Well, I mentioned the right steps in the right order, which is something that you talk about consistently.
Mhm.
And for me, my diet was completely
Mm,
out of whack.
yeah,
I wasn't drinking water.
yeah.
I was living on junk food and diet soda.
Hmm.
I had a number of food sensitivities, intolerances, and even outright allergies.
Yep,
Didn't know it.
yep.
All of those things that needed to be addressed, but in the right sequence. And
Order
so
matters.
getting the diet change, being completely off of gluten, I never thought that was possible, ever.
Really?
It's in everything.
No, it's not. That's the
That's how
story
I
that
felt.
that story. Yes, that's how you felt. And that was your story.
Yes,
It was a damn good self-serving story that kept you sick.
yes,
And that story's bullshit.
yes.
It's not in
It is.
everything.
No, there's a whole world out there without gluten.
Hell yeah. It's called
I
the
didn't
world of
think
living quality of life.
right. I drink water all day long, every day, and I love it.
Dandelion tea. And I love it.
Exactly. Being put on the right supplements, finding out my hormone issues and being on the right
Huge.
supplements,
Your hormone issues are huge.
thyroid.
I mean, even before we go to thyroid, you had hormone problems from your teens. I could already tell from your history. If I was the physician treating you, knowing what I know, the moment you said acne, some of these teenage issues, the migraines, I already knew what your hormone pattern were. I already knew that was your hormone pattern that was triggering the autoimmune disease from a teenager. It didn't
Yeah.
come out of nowhere, people. You had a huge hormonal shift in your teenage years. That was the onset of your autoimmunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and think about in all these years of working with 30 years, 30 specialists minimum, right? Probably 3,000 hours or 300 hours of time spent on medical things or learning about it. I mean, did anyone talk about the importance of hormones in your situation in either exacerbating or creating new diagnosis or any link with autoimmunity?
Nobody in my entire life until this program has ever talked about my hormones.
Okay.
I didn't even really think that they were of consequence.
Okay. What did you learn about your hormones that's of consequence?
They're everything.
Hell yes. Hail to the yes. Thank you. Amen. Hallelujah.
Yeah. And all of mine were off.
Yeah, I know. And they've been off for at least 30 years, lady.
Right.
I mean, could you share with the audience what you learned? What are some of the patterns that you had that you now know was triggering your autoimmunity?
Sure. So I had terrible acne from high school
Mhm.
through probably my early 30s. It was bad.
So what's the pattern you discovered through your data and the training in the program?
So I now know that, I hope I get this right, that is high estrogen and or high testosterone.
So you had PCOS with estrogen dominance.
Thank you.
I knew that when you already told me your teenage symptoms, I already knew it. And this is why for me, like, it's so important because so many people are watching this and they're like, oh, what's my hormone thing? But the thing is, if you knew these patterns and you had a teenage daughter, you'd be like, bingo, that's the onset of autoimmunity in her. We're gonna deal with that now. What would have Brenda had been like if Brenda had a mom that knew all this stuff and saw that pattern and said, now that on my watch, that ain't happening to you.
Right.
So I love that we're interrupting that pattern, not only in yourself, but there are going to be people around you in the generation next to you. There's a generation above you in your dad's health. There's the information to your nieces and nephews, you know, that there are going to be 3 generations minimum that you are going to be interrupting this pattern because now you understand what that pattern is. And with the PCOS and the estrogen dominance, what were some of the underlying causes that you needed to fix? What's fueling it? You mentioned it already.
I have very low stomach acid.
Digestion problems, everybody.
My
Huge in autoimmune.
digestion is screwed up.
Hail to the yes. And who the hell talks about digestion in autoimmunity? And it's a root cause here, everybody. And there's data around that, not just, oh, you have a digestion problem. There's data around this. You know, without any doubt through your data that there's a digestion issue. Is that correct? And you also know how to fix it.
Yes.
Thank you. So hormones was really huge. And you mentioned some food sensitivities, food mapping. All right.
Yes.
So here's the thing, like your conventional doctor is going to say food mapping is bunk or food sensitivity is bunk. First of all, we're very different than food sensitivities. Food mapping is a whole different process I created. Okay. Yes, it involves correctly diagnosing or looking at what your food sensitivities are, but it's a whole process. It's not just the test. So can I ask you, what was your experience with food mapping? Was there any shockers in there? And how is it different than everything you've ever done with your diet? First of all, were there any shockers in your food mapping?
Yeah, no, it's a little less shocking now that I've had some education about why
Okay.
I've become intolerant to those.
Yeah.
But I had no idea that I was not going to be able to continue eating, that I shouldn't have been eating, for instance, almonds.
But they're healthy.
And I don't eat that many.
But they're healthy and they're gluten-free. What are you talking about?
It's made gluten-free baking a bit of a challenge, but I have overcome it.
Because you know what? You'd rather be pain-free.
That's right.
You know exactly how to do it. Because
Yeah.
you know what? If you eat almonds again, there's a cause and there's an effect. And you're like, yeah, that ain't worth it anymore.
Yes.
It's not just an idea or some book or some generalized diet that's personalized to no one. Your data said almonds was a problem for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So almonds was like the shocker. Some of these things that were supposedly healthy.
Yeah. I have always been a big sunflower seed addict, and I was scored very highly on the don't ever eat that again.
Isn't that good to know?
Range.
That's so awesome.
It is. And I was really upset at first. It's like, how am I going to survive without them? And now I just am so annoyed with sunflower seeds because they're an ingredient in so many foods.
Because sometimes sunflower seed oil, right?
Right.
Yeah. But at the same time, from a dietary standpoint, that's great that you know, you're looking at that and you're like, I'm not going to do that because it has sunflower in it. Now I feel great. But the other thing is, from a snacking standpoint, you can easily say, why don't I eat pumpkin seeds?
Yes.
I mean, it's not that hard once you have the data, especially when you know you feel better with that.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think was your favorite thing about working with us? If you could name multiple, but what do you think are some of your favorite things?
I loved the whole group aspect. We learned together. We learned from each other.
People think that's a minus, Brenda. People think, why can't I get some one-on-one time with her? Why don't I find another physician to get some one-on-one quality care? What are you saying?
But I do get one-on-one time with you in that group setting. And then everything it never even occurred to me to bring up, other people are bringing up.
So you learn 10 times fast.
Yeah.
I know. And people don't understand that because they're so used to this huddled in the corner of the physician for 15 minutes as being the best and the only model of care. And actually, when you actually look, I mean, what do you think what your speed and level and quality and quantity of learning is in this process versus everything you've ever done?
It's been much more effective.
Way more. I mean, so you guys learned together. How did you find, how did your people that you went through the program with support you?
We met every week. We messaged each other throughout the week. Checking in on each other.
Accountability.
Just knowing that somebody actually cares about you when you're going through a flare or not feeling very well. And that not just they care about you, but they get it.
Yeah.
They've been through that.
Well, how do you respond?
You didn't have to say anything. They saw it in your eyes.
It's true. And how do you respond to someone who says, I'm a really private person. I don't want to share what's going on with me with other people.
I'm pretty introverted and I don't share a lot with people. I got over that really quickly.
In a good way or bad way?
This is a safe group. In a good way. This is a safe group.
Can't get any more safer than this.
We've all been through it. And frankly, 100% transparency. I thought, if I'm paying for this, I'm speaking up. I'm taking
Hell yeah.
advantage of every option.
Hell to the
Why
yeah.
would I not
Yeah.
speak up?
So you had mentioned that. So you like the fact that it was a group setting, you did it together. You felt like there were other people supporting you through this process who knew and understood innately. And even being an introvert, you found the process educational and enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else? Favorite?
Yeah, I felt like everybody in the program itself, you, Allie, our nutritionist, and others, you're all just real. You're very authentic. You're very authentic. You're open. You're caring. And you are extremely passionate about autoimmune and getting us all out of this.
Yeah. And you
saving us from ourselves.
Because you mentioned sometimes I'm hard.
Tough love.
Yeah. And, you know, you had mentioned, I think you had mentioned, and sometimes some people like who's not used to direct, and especially being an introvert, you're an introvert, I'm an extrovert, right? There's a little bit of a clash there. Like, so my question is, how was that in the beginning? Just getting used to the direct communication, sharing this time, learning from an extrovert. How was that for you?
I've spent a lot of time working on myself in the last few years of being really open to getting feedback and tough love and not taking things so personally and sensitively.
Yeah.
Because I'm one of those highly sensitive people, and it doesn't really help you progress and grow through life.
Yeah.
So I think maybe the first, I don't even remember a particular instance because it didn't faze me that much. It was more of, oh, I'm being called out because of whatever the reason was, and she's right.
Well, here's the thing. I think every time someone does something, quote unquote, we think is wrong, or say something that's quote unquote wrong, to me, it's actually the opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. If everyone answered everything correctly, I have no opportunities with which to teach and for you guys to learn. Okay. You guys are just all there to regurgitate content to me and be right. It's every time someone, quote unquote, makes a mistake or gets confused about something is when I'm like, aha, this is where tons of people get confused. Remember all the B12 stuff? I'm like, people get confused on this point over and over again. Thank you for the opportunity. Let's talk it through. Let's talk it out so you don't make that mistake again, because this is confusing. It's a pitfall. This is why for me, this is very different educational process than just say, hey, here, read this, you're good. It's more like, hey, you know, watch this video, look at your own data, try to get the most you can out of it. Let's share what your conclusions are and let's troubleshoot there, shoot through that. And let's avoid these pitfalls. Here are the pitfalls so that you learn this for life. You learn this skill for life. This isn't information regurgitation. This is learning a skill to troubleshoot your autoimmunity for life.
Yes.
That's an extremely tall, different order than I'm going to just throw some information. People say, I want to come in to get all the information. You know what? In the age of information on Google, in 2 minutes, you can get the answer to any question. Go to Google if you want information. But if you want information that is personalized to you and that is put together in a specific order and it's put in a perspective and the context and the framing around your autoimmune issue that is reproducible so that even if it shows up in a different flavor in your life in a different way, you know what to do with it. That is a very tall order and promise I have to make to someone. And it is a commitment. It is a commitment that I'm making, that I'm teaching you guys all how to think like me.
And it's not just information you're giving us, it's knowledge. And that's a big difference. It's
the skill set. So I like to tell people that I don't want to just throw fish at you. I want to teach you how to fish. And that's my promise. That is a promise. All right. Next question. What's something that you can do now effortlessly that 2 months ago you would have thought was impossible?
Walk across the street.
Oh, that?
Yeah. Now this may sound weird, but I think a lot of people will go, oh my gosh, really? Is that possible? Just getting in and out of the shower used to be pretty scary. Because if I slipped, that was going to be it. And I couldn't maintain my balance on the wet surface in the shower. Yeah. I don't even think about that now.
I love that. You know, Brenda, one of the things we shared, I remember, and I won't go in all the detail about it, but, you know, we have modules on mindset throughout the program. One of the modules is around how to set healthy boundaries. People you
Mhm.
work with, people you live with, in our lives. And one of the things that I find a lot of people have problems with is that when you're sick yourself, a lot of times, sometimes we may not feel the support with other people in our lives.
Mhm.
And so what was your experience and how did you navigate that? And what did you learn from this?
So I went into this knowing that boundaries and setting boundaries was a big challenge and issue for me. I
Mhm.
had just come out of a really toxic work environment
Mhm.
where boundaries were a big issue.
Mhm.
And I have difficulty setting boundaries with people, period.
Yeah.
That was something I had to really start learning in this program, as you know, and had to start practicing. It's been hard, but had to start practicing setting boundaries even with the people in my personal life.
Especially with the people in your personal life.
Yes. And so for me to tell people no, or maybe it's just not right now because of X, Y, or Z. And sometimes
Right.
it's just, no, I'm not going to be able to do that. That was really hard for me because I'm a lifelong people pleaser.
I know that's what got you sick and kept you sick, lady.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And because I had been in a position so long of being the caregiver,
Yeah.
first for my mother who passed away, and then for my father who is older and had been sick, but is much healthier now, and I live with him.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit resigned to the fact that I was going to be the caregiver for the rest of my life
Mhm.
without the ability to say no,
Mhm.
even if it's just no for right now. Maybe
Mhm.
it's just no, I need this day for
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. I think boundaries is not a no. I think it's a yes, and here's the how. Actually, well, yes, I can have a relationship with you, but this is what the relationship's going to look like.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of people think it's boundaries just means no, no, no. I think it's a yes with a how. Even if it's yes, but I'm only going to see you once a year. That's still a yes, and here's the how. Because yes, here's the how to make it safe for me and you. Right? So for me, it's not always about a no. A lot of times, exercising and practicing boundaries is about saying the yes, but declaring what your how is going to be in a very
Yeah.
direct, clear way. Right?
Mhm.
Exactly. Wow. So this comes full circle. I mean, this is, a lot of people think this is about medical. This is about you work in medicine, and this is about your medical diagnosis. But yet we're ending this with a huge amount of full circle emotional growth for you, personal growth for you.
Mhm. It really was. And I have friends and colleagues who are asking me, "What's going on with you? You look different. You seem more confident." And so I tell them, and I have friends who are saying, "I am so glad you're focusing on you and learning about boundaries and taking walks and eating better." Those are all important, but mainly they're just really happy and are noticing that I look different and that I'm interacting differently.
I think
So
your
thank you.
dad, I think your dad is noticing differences.
He is. My dad is a huge cynic. Everything is like, well, that's just their idea. Well, they just made that up. And I think it was maybe yesterday, the day before, he was grousing a little bit about more cruciferous vegetables. And he loves vegetables. And I said, well, Dad, just take a step back. How do you think I'm doing? Do I look better or do I look worse? How do you think I'm doing energy wise? So he says, I think you're doing so much better. I can't even believe it. So, Dr. Maggie.
Brenda. Oh, congratulations. Well, thank you, Brenda, for sharing your journey and your insight and being truly open and vulnerable with us. There's going to be a lot of Brendas out there that you're going to be speaking to. And think about this for a second. The Brenda out there who's been stalking us 2 years, longtime stalker, first time roller, thinking about, will this work? Will this work for me? Is this a scam? Is she for real? What's your
Mhm.
advice for somebody watching your interview right now who's going through those very same questions?
I think this program is absolutely for anybody who's been dealing with autoimmune or mystery possible autoimmune
Mhm.
issues, whether it's for a day, a month or 30 plus years. I hope that it doesn't take everybody 30 plus years.
Yeah, here's another question. Was it worth it?
Absolutely. So one of the things I had to gauge going into this is, the cost versus benefit ratio. This goes into the
You
healthcare
must.
business mindset.
You must. Yes. What's the return on my investment?
Right.
Financially responsible.
And when I actually started crunching numbers, thinking about cost of program versus continuing this lifestyle, the continued prescriptions, tests, the really poor diet I was eating, etc., it's just a no-brainer. I would spend over not a very long period of time more financial resources on continuing to be really unhealthy and probably living for a couple of more years. So having invested, and that was a question you actually asked quite a bit throughout the intake process. And
Yeah.
have you ever invested in yourself? And I was so uncomfortable with that because I never invested in myself.
Because you're low self-worth.
And because I was told that we can't afford that.
Who's we anyway? Who's speaking for you?
Well, that goes to boundaries.
You're a grown-ass adult woman. We don't need to be having someone else speak for you. It's not we.
Mm-hmm.
I.
Yeah.
So if you said I can't afford that, that's a self-worth issue for you. But who's speaking? Would you let someone else speak for you?
Right.
They don't get to do that. No one else gets to do that for you.
Yeah. So absolutely worthwhile. There's just no price you can put on feeling so much better, especially when you didn't think it was possible, let alone now feeling like I actually have a future.
You used to tell me you didn't know how to laugh or you forgot how to laugh.
I did.
What's the
I
price
didn't
of
realize
laughter?
it.
What is the price of living in joy or having laughter back in your life? That's genuine
Right.
and real.
I've been laughing a lot more lately. Gut laughing. I forgot what that's like. Laughing until I cry. I forgot what that's like. I hadn't really realized I had stopped. But when you're in constant pain, there's less laughter.
Here's the laughter. This is what I live for.
Yeah.
This is why I do this. I'm not doing this to be right. I'm not doing this to, like people think, oh my gosh, she's doing this. I'm not doing this for that. This is what brings me joy. Like I'm genuinely enthused. It brings me joy. I want to spend every moment of my life that I have remaining doing things that bring me joy because I fought for this time. I fought for this time.
Yeah.
I fought hard for this time. And so I'm going to enjoy it. So I'm very intentional. I mean, so Brenda, when you say that we're in our whole intake process, we actually ask a lot of questions because I'm actually really having my team choose the people that I want to work with. The most expensive resource we have in this life is our time. So I choose very carefully who I'm going to spend my time with. And that's my boundary. Yeah. I want to help people who want to be helped. I want to help people who care just as much, if not more than I do. I don't want to be sitting here fighting somebody or having somebody like doubt my intentions or waste their time or my time or their resources or my time resources, right? So I'm very intentional about making sure we have a whole process where we interview, choose, we educate to make sure that the people coming in have the right intentions, the right mindset, and the open learning super learners that they really are. That's who's going to get these great outcomes. So that's why we spend the time and resources to really screen, educate, and nurture the people that do come in. Well, Brenda, that's a wrap. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I mean, seriously, just thank you so much for what you do and for your, maybe I'll get verklempt, but just for your lifelong passion and your call to help us all out, because there's so much autoimmune in the world. It's beyond crazy.
Thank you. I'm excited. I mean, this is what brings me joy. So thank you for sharing your journey here. And you're really open and vulnerable. Kudos to you, girl. For an introvert, you did like an extrovert.
I've learned.
All right, congratulations. Thank you. If you're interested in learning more about the program or working with us, there's a link above or below the video for you to start a chat with our team.
That was great.
Amazing.